international trade, laws and regulations, and the global investment market. To participate and compete in the global cannabis marketplace, thoughtful regulation is key. The laws in each country determine the viability of successful production, manufacturing for export, and attract investments for the required infrastructure. Regulations must ensure that product adheres to European Good Agricultural and Manufacturing Practices, GAP, the strictest in the world, and where the wealthy consumer import markets currently exist. Importantly, permit types and access to licenses, along with quality education, can determine the course for local job creation and equity. Focus on health, safety, and wealth building for the nation, citizens, and environmental management in law. Executive Chancellor at Oaksterdam University. From the United States of America, Dale Sky Jones.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get going presently. All right. So as you said, we are here to discuss international trade, but it really starts within the country's borders. My name is Dale Sky Jones. As the introduction said, my days are spent on education and advocacy. Oaksterdam is the first formalized educational institution of its kind. Many believe it is also the best, myself included, and we work really hard to keep our programs cutting edge with fresh learning outcomes to set you up for success and prepare you for mitigating your risks along the way. It's not just what you want to know, but what you need to know, what you didn't even realize you had to know. I'm also an organizer and a policy wonk. This issue is multi-dimensional chess. Unwinding the drug war has been a study of unintended consequences. My current projects include descheduling, government and public affairs, and social equity. And these days I spend way more time with policymakers, elected officials and their staffs, as well as state agencies, including training the second largest tax collection agency in the world, and several state and local governments. Oaksterdam recently completed a contract with the city of San Francisco and is currently in contract with the city of Los Angeles for business and workforce technical assistance. The war on drugs has failed, and it is also my personal moral imperative to end the global war on drugs, also as a mother of three. Now, Oaksterdam University, we have been around now for a quarter of a century as a movement, and during this 25-year history, our founders and leaders were the first to work with local government to establish self-regulation and then local regulation. And eventually we went all the way to the Supreme Court to try to change these laws back in the 90s through the judiciary, while simultaneously teaching others how to grow and consume medicinal quality cannabis. The school then began teaching entrepreneurs how to start in the business of cannabis, and then regulators and agents how to tax and regulate cannabis, starting first with the police, how to recognize a patient and how to use their discernment, as well as city employees, including the current mayor of Oakland back in the day. While becoming the only hands-on lab for cannabis horticulture in the world where students could come, we also wrote and led the first voter initiative that became the blueprint for moving forward and actually inspired the change that a lot of us see today. Our faculty and advisors, subject matter experts, and alumni are the shoulders we all stand on as we enjoy the concept today of global investment in cannabis. Because before Oaksterdam got going, marijuana was a purely illegal contraband. The school was formally founded in 2007 to provide quality training for the cannabis industry, a term we first coined as part of our mission statement. And Oaksterdam's student body is comprised of over 50,000 alumni who walked through our doors from over 40 countries. Our programs now focus on business and workforce development, horticulture, the business of cannabis and supply chain, extractions, manufacturing, and bud tending training. We also offer free classes on advocacy, starting from seed, and importantly, cannabis, pain, and the opioid crisis. Now, everything we teach is available online. We are now based in your living room or your office space, live, virtual formats, or self-paced with access to a video library. And there's nothing like what we do at Oaksterdam. We try to make it easy and inexpensive to become part of this global community, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I encourage you to continue to improve your understanding through these programs offered today, as well as Oaksterdam programs developed and taught by expert practitioners designed for you to succeed. Now let's get started. We have to begin with the US model. Actually, don't. The US model is flawed at best. The US model, let's face it, is terrible. We exported prohibition from the United States. We are the example of what not to do. However, our neighbors to the north are a different story. Canada? Export of cannabis or hemp is entirely prohibited in the US. We have a state versus federal law that is frankly ridiculous. Interstate commerce is prohibited. And so we have a patchwork of policies state by state. Now that offers opportunity in and of itself for international investors. But the high taxes and fees, both local and state taxes, as well as the continued criminalization federally, the USA is number one. We're about 4% of the world, yet we're a quarter of the world's prison population. Plus, no interstate commerce is also a barrier. There's no international trade, of course. Federal law prohibits it, and the US government does not even wish for discussion on the Nice Trademark Convention. So except from hemp-derived CBD, which is still not regulated, and now the new Wild West, hopefully someone else will talk about it, another topic for a different speaker. Every state is a production and market silo. And so this is now creating a very unnatural incentive for current operators who have already invested millions to keep it this way and to keep a monopoly, even internationally create oligarchies and put them in place so that just a small group of people have control over this entire industry globally. I know that we can do better than this, and I know that it is worth it. First, I want to take a look at the regulation of the activity itself, which is what determines initial success. If you fail to create sustainably a consumable, saleable, and accessible product, nothing else matters. So let's talk about regulation and the importance of institutional factors. Licensing strategy, cultivation facilities, extraction, manufacturing, lab testing, transportation, retail, tourism, consumption, a safe place, services and ancillary, and yes, those taxes and incentives are all going to determine interwoven within the supply chain. And a lot of different speakers are talking about the intricacies of these different ones. But overall, if you keep taxes low, you will tax businesses more fairly, more businesses more fairly, and have a wider acceptance from the legacy market as well, or the illicit market. Keep your taxes high, and you are incentivizing these illicit markets and, frankly, international trafficking. Laws that allow private home grow are also encouraged for non-commercial personal use. You're not only reducing the criminality of possession and growing, the number one purchasers and dispensaries in the US are home growers. They are connoisseurs, and they want to go buy what's out there, what's new, and try it. Think about it. Even people that grow their own tomatoes will still go out and buy tomatoes. It's also important to note that there are unique processing demands that require infrastructure, unique infrastructure, local infrastructure, especially for processing raw materials. Moisture, temperature, and time are the three things that are most crucial. This is an agricultural commodity with very specific needs, and you must have local processing facilities, especially for hemp used for fiber, like within 100 miles at most. Otherwise, excellent quick freeze facilities for cannabis for medicine or adult use. So, sophistication of production. Let's assume that you are on your way to positive regulation regimes. You are increasing sophistication of exports of both goods and services. Don't forget, both can be an important contributor to overall economic growth of your country or your company with cannabis and hemp as your commodity. So how do you ensure this? Well, first, structural transformations, the law and criminal justice system, health and research funding. You show me your budget, I will show you what matters. Policy reform is particularly important as well for social stigma and the decriminalization of cannabis. Sophisticated sectors are particularly likely to act as an engine of growth for the broader economy rather than turn into these isolated enclaves. But this requires a few things. First, human capital, educated workforce, and good information flows. External liberalization, hidden import barriers, mean tariff rates, taxes on international trade, capital account restrictions can all make grave differences or great differences in how your country or your company moves forward. And understanding the differences between cannabis, marijuana, and hemp is further complicated by the diverse and non-harmonized legal definitions of how countries differentiate legal cannabis from illegal cannabis. The principal distinctions and definitions are based on the cannabinoid profile of the plant, specifically a level of a chemical the plant produces depending on the chemotype and phenotype. We're talking about the same plant here, defined under two different regulatory regimes. An example of how the United States defines marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act and hemp in the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018. Both acts provide legal definitions for the plant, Cannabis L sativa, but how the plant is identified is based on the percentage of THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, contained within that plant. Other than the United States, a myriad of countries are also facing the dilemma of how to distinguish the substantive legal differences between cannabis, marijuana, and hemp when it's really the same thing. They're treated differently and also have different uses, and therefore business opportunities up and down each supply chain, including the service industry, all create amazing business opportunities. International trade, how to compete. So to what extent does increasing sophistication of your operation and your laws translate into overall economic growth or revenues? Well, manufacturing for export, number one. Good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices are crucial to be accepted into the wealthy European market. Canada, Jamaica, and Brazil are all setting up with export in mind. You also have trade in raw materials. And over time, rich and fast-growing countries have moved away from resource-based to manufactured exports. Raw materials, in this case, are not yet exportable for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which weight and time and cost to ship anything. So extractions are just obvious and best at this point. But keep in mind that those countries that are considered poorer countries export raw materials such as cocoa, iron, or diamonds, raw diamonds. Rich countries export, often to those same poor countries, more complex products such as chocolate, cars, and jewels. So if the countries that are poor want to get more wealthy, we might consider not exporting the raw resources in raw form and concentrate, but actually adding value to them. Otherwise, the wealthier countries will just simply continue to get the lion's share of the value and also all the good jobs. This goes for equipment and services and ancillary businesses just as much as the plant itself. And it also comes down, each nation, to investing in their own people. Because if you have a workforce that can afford your product, you're actually increasing your consumer base. Each nation and individual investor or investor group must determine through policy and production to focus on primary products versus higher value added resource-based products, low tech, medium tech, high tech equipment, goods, and services. Public-private infrastructure investments, low and middle-income countries can compete with this. And I just want to underline the importance of education. A highly skilled labor, a highly skilled workforce, and good information flows are especially crucial. They're critical for sophisticated service exports and sophisticated machinery and assistance. Now, going further down the supply chain, we start to talk about the end consumer, retail, tourism, and consumption. All amazing opportunities for investment. And frankly, it's also some of the best opportunities these days for small business. And this is where people of color, women of color, in our case, veterans here in the US, survive and thrive. Retail and tourism, especially for adult use. Now, it's important with medical to have safe access, and both require a safe place to consume, whether it's medicine or for adult use. You know, you look at alcohol and you have bars. Well, we need a safe place to consume cannabis as well. Public health and safety, though, is really important, including not just to the community at hand, but also to your business model and to mitigate your risk. But you're filling an important need in that community. Now, it's also good for harm reduction. So having your people start switching from opiates to cannabis to other more harmful drugs to cannabis. For instance, in Colorado, the DUI has dropped 25%. So if you just think that's statistically significant that 1 out of 4 drunks are not on the road because now they can choose cannabis, and cannabis is a safer alternative to alcohol. So we talk about public health and safety as the business model and harm reduction as a policy. I want to go back to home grow one more time, because not only does it encourage purchasing more, it also is going to help reduce the stigma. So many of our ancestors used and consumed cannabis for various reasons. And so we're really just bringing it back into our lives and making it acceptable again. And those consumption lounges or events that allow consumption also directly speaks to having a whole other market. And if you're not able to consume cannabis safely in public, you are stifling the domestic market entirely and robbing your citizens of that opportunity for harm reduction choices, as well as your business opportunities. Let's talk advocacy. And this is also good for your bottom line. Put your own farmers first. It's important that locals get the first chance and build intergenerational wealth, so they can also be your customers. Also, stewards of the land. It's important to practice sustainability. We need to use licensing to ensure that your own citizens and not just outside sources have a chance to build wealth as well as opportunities. And if you are investing, invest in the human resources to also improve that consumer base so they can afford to purchase your product domestically. Prepare for predatory behavior. There is a myriad of laws. There are different ways to determine access to a market. Some nations like Canada and Jamaica require local ownership, certain percentages. South Africa and Botswana use their natural wealth to force industrialization by restricting the export of minerals in raw form. It's a policy known locally as benefication. Do these policies work as intended? Perhaps for next year, we can look into that. But briefly, I do also hope that you will consider how important the words that we use are. Words matter, not for kids. Recreational is considered a bad word around here, especially as a mom of 3 kids, because recreational is fun for children. And this is for adult use, not for kids. Packaging awareness about how we are framing this as either medical or adult use is explaining, hey kids, it's not for you unless you're either a patient or an adult. So we can get this right. So in conclusion, emerging markets engaging in the new economic activities. You know, this is your hit of hope for the future. If you are engaging in completely new economic activities with great potential, the industrialization of cannabis from contraband to commodity, the question at hand is now not if, but who will participate based on how laws and regulations are structured. The global investment market is still siloed and muddled. And exports, though, could be an engine of growth for the broader economy if the economy is liberalized, the exchange rate is not overvalued, and there are good information flows. So if we reduce incarceration and improve human outcomes by shifting resources from criminal, you can make this happen for your neck of the woods. You can do it. It is worth it. And I want to especially thank the Cannabis Investment Summit World for this global medical cannabis and herb forum. Thank you for inviting me. The more you know, the more you grow. And I hope you please visit Oaksterdam.com to find the education programs that meet your needs from wherever you are. I'm Dale Sky Jones. Thank you for your time and attention. And I hope to see you in Oaksterdam soon. Thank you.